So, good morning, everybody, or evening, or wherever it is you are in the world, because I know we have some people that are very far away from Seattle and Utah joining. I'm in Seattle, Carly's in Utah, and I want to introduce you to Carly because not all of you know who she is. Carly is a bookbinder, a book artist, and an incredible businesswoman. She's the only bookbinder I know who has managed to pull down six figures year over year doing bookbinding. So I think that's pretty amazing, and we can learn a lot from her. And she has some incredible experience on defining your product, making it, selling it, and reaching her target audience.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here. You are at the Business of Book Arts webinar. The whole purpose of this is to really help you to understand how to sell and market your books. You love making books. You love doing it. I know. I've been there. I totally get this. You want to be able to continue doing it, and some of you really want to make it as a full-time bookbinder. The purpose of the series of webinars that we're going to be doing is to really help you understand how to market your books in a way that really allows people to experience them just like you do. I get the feel, I know how it is to really love your books and want them to be used and really loved too. We're jumping right into this, okay? I hope you have your printout ready, or at least a notebook to take notes. I know some of you have notebooks are lying around, right? We're working on your foundational principles for your book art business today. So I'll be referring to books as we go throughout this webinar, but if you work in another artistic discipline, you'll find that this applies to you as well. So we're delving first into the design of our books. What do you like to make most? First, we're going to list the type of book that you like to make most. I want you to make a list of the books that you have really loved creating. I want you to think of your favorite style, your favorite materials, your favorite colors. What books have you created that you really enjoyed the process of making, or you really loved the final outcome of it? Just list the top like 1 to 3 if you can. Or if you have a long list, I want you to circle your top 1 to 3 favorites. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this. I really want you to brainstorm for a bit and think about those things that you really loved creating. We're going to move on to the next column. What do you want to sell? List them all, okay? Just start writing. What are the types of books you'd like to sell? Be generally specific, meaning give an estimate on like sizes of books you'd like to sell, or types of books you'd like to sell, or materials you'd use to sell your books. You know, what will you use? This doesn't have to match up with your first list, so don't even worry about that. It could be something totally different. What I want to sell might be a type of book I don't necessarily enjoy making. I might want to sell it for other reasons. Maybe it looks great on my portfolio, or maybe it's the most cost-effective, or maybe it's the quickest for me to make. Maybe I know it will sell well, so I want to keep selling it because I know that there's great proof that it will bring in income. Give it some thought. We're going to give you another minute and just write down what you might want to sell. It doesn't have to be one thing. You can totally just make a list of them. Okay, what are you great at making? Okay, be honest with yourself. Okay, whatever book structures you think your skills are best at, go ahead and write those down. Whatever materials you think you're skilled at working with, go ahead and write those down. You might even want to make a subsection in this third area. You might think, okay, I'm all right at working with leather, but I have a great desire to become really proficient with it. Go ahead and just make a subsection of bookbinding skills to learn, because you believe you'd love to create books with those master skills someday. They'll just pop into your head as you're writing what you're good at and what you might want to be good at. Skills you have and skills you'd love to have and would like to work toward achieving. Be honest with yourself. No one is reading your list but you. What are you good at? And what would you like to be good at when it comes to creating books? I'll give you a minute here. All right, purpose. We are moving on, but you'll refer back to the things that you just wrote down as you design your books, okay? The next step is to determine who you are serving. This is a total change of gears. You just went into retrospective thought on what you like to make, and this next exercise is a step in a totally different realm, okay? The books you have, or the books that you make, they have a purpose. We're going to determine their purpose. So how do we do this? First, make a list of how the books that you make and sell are used. This might be a long list. Some of you have already narrowed down your product design to know its purpose. You might be able to say that the books you make are used by photographers as gifts to their clients, or maybe you can say that your books are used as baby books by new mothers, or maybe you create journals specifically to be used for recording events during travels, like a travel journal. Go ahead and start listing. Some of you will not even have enough space on that page. Go ahead and turn the page over and keep writing. Write down, how are your books used? Okay, right across from your list of how your book will be used, write down who would use that book. If you wrote down travel journal, then your who might be someone who is taking a trip. Or if you wrote down marriage proposal albums on your how list, you might put someone who is thinking of proposing. The purpose of this exercise really is to understand that someone is going to be using the book that you make. They'll be using it for a purpose, and if you understand who that person is and how they will be using the book, you'll be able to not only market your books better, but you'll be able to serve them better as you come to understand their specific needs in their books. So go ahead and write down, just straight across in the column, write down who is actually going to be using that specific book. Some of these, it's going to be really, really hard because you're not very specific in who actually, on the how. Maybe you just wrote journal on the side. You could write a journal writer, but it's better to be really specific about your who. Is it a proficient journal writer, somebody who writes in their journal every single day? Is it a once a year journal writer? If you can get, the more specific you can get about your who and how they're actually using your book, the easier it will be to understand them and what they need from the book. But this is something you might want to come back to, especially because I know some of you might make really long lists and you might have used the back of your paper. The next step is to list where you can find these people. Okay, we won't take time on this right now, but I want you to come back to this and make a list of where you can find each person you've put in the second column. This is one of the keys to marketing successfully. You need to find where your who hangs out. If you write down expecting mothers as your who, because the book's purpose is to be used as a mother's journal, then you can write down places that expecting mothers might hang out. Think of local places like maternity wear shops or pediatrician offices, or online you might look for people to partner with specifically in that niche. Perhaps you'd partner with someone who sells baby toys, diaper bags, or baby clothes to do a giveaway on Instagram. Or maybe you'd find an expecting mother who is an influencer via social media or a blog to advertise with. It's so much easier to market and to understand how to get your book into other people's hands and in front of the people who really want to buy it if you know who you're selling it to and where you can find them. So this is an exercise to really brainstorm. But it's also a great one to do when you've narrowed down what it is you really want to make, because some of your lists will be really long of the things that you create and the people that will use them. The more you can narrow that down, then the where becomes so much easier. For some of you, this exercise was too frustrating. You have a blank book and it can be used for anything, right? Stay with me, okay? I hope that you can see from this exercise, though, that it's easier to market your books if you have a purpose and you know who will be using them. You might want to do this exercise again and really narrow down the purpose of your books. Who are you making them for? What will they be using them for? Where can you find these people? And if you do this, it will take your business to the next level. We're going to move on and shift gears completely again, but after we've talked about all three parts, you'll see how things fit together. We are going to talk about the style of your books. Some bookbinders and book artists have a strong style. If you have a solid style, your clients or customers will know what to expect from you. If they request a custom order, they'll know what to expect. You might be asked to collaborate on projects more often because your style is consistent and your collaborators know what to expect from you. We're going to fill in the first column on the third page of your worksheet. Why is it important to create a strong style? Okay, creating a strong style, it allows you to produce more. It allows you to produce at a higher skill level. And it allows for more opportunities to be placed in your path. I'll repeat those later if you didn't catch them all. There's this idea out there that in order to have a style, you have to find it, or it just comes naturally. Some people have it and some people don't, right? Totally wrong, okay? I'm going to show you a few artists that have a really strong style. I will then show you how to determine what your style is today. So you can totally walk away from this webinar with your own artistic style for your books. The first book artist we'll take a look at is Kaya Rentakari. Kaya creates handmade books, fine bindings, mixed media art, and artist books. Her style is very consistent with everything she makes in any category. She has a high level of craftsmanship and it really shows throughout all of her work. She has thin, crisp lines throughout, and the consistency of subtle textures is just amazing to me. Okay, notice how she uses very delicate textures, subdued colors with pops of gold or other metals. She also uses thin layers throughout her work. She's really all about the subtle details. So she's been participating in the Are You Book Enough Monthly Challenge, and her pieces reflect the theme well, but also really showcase her style. Notice the delicate textures and thin layers. These are from the last 3 months. There's February's tiny book theme, and then there's March's mapped theme, and April's poetry theme. Our next artist is Sarah Bryant of BigJumpPress.com. Sarah is an instructor in the book arts program at the University of Alabama. She does sell her artist books, but because it's not her main income, she really approaches her books more as an art form than a product to sell. If anyone wants to talk about this further, meaning the divide between product and art, please go ahead and ask me during the Q&A at the end. I have things to say about it. Sarah Bryant's books have a very strong style to them. They have bold graphics, they have strong themes and colors that pop. She utilizes the negative space just in such a beautiful way. Take a look at that. There are also layers to her work, which the layers really enhance the use of negative space and the popping of colors. And then notice the bold graphics, and she uses the use of the negative space. Just beautiful, strong, and consistent style. Okay, here is Louise Bascond. She is incredible. Louise does unique bindings on manuscripts and original editions. She puts a lot of time into her work. Louise does fine binding. I know some of you are new to that term. So fine binding is a term that is used to describe like a hand binding of high craftsmanship and quality. Usually it's a binding that's designed specifically for a published book. And often you'll find that these fine bindings are done in leather with some type of ornamentation on them, like tooling or leather inlays. It's totally an art form all on its own. You'll see this as we look at Louise's fine bindings. We need to credit her amazing photographer here. His name is Hugo Julio. Hugo does amazing photographs of Louise's books. Her website is full of them, and I suggest you take a look at after the webinar. You wouldn't really be able to understand what Louise does without these amazing photos. Her work's it's very detailed, and it's of the highest craftsmanship. Have you noticed her style? So even though she does unique pieces to match the book, you can see a consistency. She uses the smallest details in repetition. Her books totally have rhythm to them. Notice the beautifully sewn headbands and the tooling details. It's just so amazing, so beautiful. She uses a variety of techniques, including blind tooling and gold tooling, and she utilizes the use of subtle layers of dye or paints on her covers. Notice the tooling and the layers of the color. You can see the texture and the finest tooling job. I have fallen in love with Louisa's work, and it's gorgeous. And a lot of her style has to do with her consistency and craftsmanship. As we record this webinar, her current lead time is actually 2 years, meaning if you want a bound book by Louise, you'll want to get on the waiting list as soon as possible because she's booked for the next 2 years. Louisa Boyd is our next artist. Whether it's etchings or collages or artist books, Louisa's style shows through. Can you see the consistency in her color choices? The use of geometric circles, geographic symbols and lines, the use of contrast and value. Contrast and value just means the lights and the darks throughout the piece. She uses them just so beautifully. Louisa is amazing at narrowing her color choices. Notice that throughout this series of artwork, everything harmonizes together really well because of the use of color. She's really limited her palette. The circles can be found throughout her artwork, and you'll notice in this top book right here, the shadow shows that there's circles that are cut out from the paper. So many details and so much thought. So I minored in geography in college, and I immediately connected with Louisa's artwork. Whether it's the form of a traditional book or another form, Louisa really connects her style from one piece to the next. Her work is just so beautiful. I love it. Okay, we've seen 4 book artists that have a really strong style. Why is it important to create a strong style? Okay, creating a strong style allows you to produce more. It allows you to produce at a higher skill level, and it allows for more opportunities to be placed in your path. We know having a strong style can help us produce our books and market our books, but how do we actually create our own style? So here's the secret. You don't find it, you create it. It's all about making decisions and creating rules for your own artwork. So this quote has been said in various ways. Learn the rules of art and then you can break them. It's been attributed to a lot of different famous people like the Dalai Lama and Pablo Picasso. Truth is, we really don't actually know who said it, but it's been thrown around for decades, and artists strive to live by this quote. I'm going to turn the tables. I'm going to tell you that you do not break the rules to become a better artist. I'm making my own quote. If you want to find your style, create more rules for your own artwork. There, I said it. Let me show you how it worked for me, and we'll walk you through the process of crafting your own style. So here are 2 books. I want you to understand that crafting your style is all about making decisions. I made both of these books. One reflects the style I chose, and the other does not. I love both of these books. I really enjoyed the process of making these books, and I really loved selling these, knowing that they went to people who loved them too and would use them well. I want you to take a look at your own books and find the common factors. Remember the list of books that you really like to make? What do those books have in common? For me, I really liked working with leather and doing raised designs. The structure is the common factor between these books. They are both cord bound, the raised cord in the leather. So we are going to actually use the common factors column. We're going to make decisions in order to craft our style. In this column, or in this common factors column, I want you to list your favorite colors you use on your books. Do you like using popping colors like Sarah Bryant, or muted colors, natural and the metals like Kaya Ratakari? Or maybe you're brave enough to limit your color palette as much as Louisa Boyd? Take a look at your books. What do you enjoy using most? Then take a look at your materials, okay? What papers do you tend to use most often? Do you tend to use leather or paper or book cloth most? Do you use different textiles or wood or clay or glass or metal? What materials will you choose to define your style of book? So I'll give you 30 seconds, mostly for thought because your writing should be short. The more you limit your options, the greater your style will become. You can go ahead and write everything you love, but in the end, you might only be picking a few of those out to really use. Okay. In that column, I want you to make a note to think about structures, sizes, and themes. You may or may not decide to delve that deep into your style. Some bookbinders are known for doing one type of structure, and some book artists only do one size of book. And so some book artists stick to a theme throughout all their artwork. Just give this some thought. It's more than a 30-second thinking session. This really is. So make a note to kind of look at those and make those decisions later. So during this webinar, I hope you've had some aha moments so far. And I hope you take time to reflect and go through the worksheets. Answer the questions, create very short answers from your long lists. The more rules you put into place, the easier it will be to make decisions with the books you create. If you know what materials you'll use, then you'll only buy or collect those materials. If you know what colors you're using, then it will be easier to decide how to use those colors. It'll push your creativity if you use those rules. Part of my style is making my books have age and wear to them. I know that if I make something a bit too pristine, I need to take a metal file to it. Yes, I've totally done this. Taking a metal file to a newly bound book was really hard, the first time anyway. Or I might need to paint it with antiques, or I might need to throw water on it to make it rust. It allows me to stay consistent, okay, to strengthen my style. It connects my books and it reflects the rules I've chosen for my own books. I want those books to have a lot to say, and age usually has a lot to say. It holds a story of its own. You can choose how to carry those rules across various categories. Will you hold the same style with the functional journals, the sketchbooks, the photo albums that you sell? Will you use the same style to create your artist books or your other artwork? Maybe your prints or your mixed media pieces. You know, think about what materials you like to use and the style you want to create. Really narrow those things down. You have some great decisions to make. These decisions could change how you do your business. These are your foundation. They will take you to the next level and allow you to grow in your art and your business. We'll use this foundation as we venture into other topics in future webinars. You'll be able to see how the choices you make now will help you when you delve into pricing your artwork or photographing your artwork, or even talking to others about your artwork, just talking about it. It will become easier to talk about what you make and create because you've narrowed down your style. You've really given some thought to what you're creating. My hope is that you will take these questions and continue to work through them after the webinar. This is totally we did a quick run through today, but I really want you to take some time on your own and reflect on it. Take a look at your actual pieces of artwork. Go through your photos of your books. Go through the books themselves. See if you can find the common factors and really narrow down your style. And then go back to that list, like on that first page where it says, what do you like to make and what do you want to sell and what are you great at making? Find common factors in that. See how your style fits and plays into that. It will change some of the decisions that you make in your business and what you really want to be creating and where you might want to go from here. So we are going to do a Q&A, and we might not answer them all today, but we'll answer them at some point, whether it's in a future webinar or as a topic in the community forums or on a blog post or via editions.studio on Instagram. We'll do our best to answer all of them.
I have a question. And that is, how did you, like, how long did it take you to develop this style that you have, where everything looks very aged and worn?
About 3 months.
Okay. So
Okay.
that's good to know that there is a timeline and that we're not going to get
Yeah.
everything finished here in webinar.
It probably actually took me years. I have no idea. Um, if I had sat down and did this exercise and had really thought about it, then it would have gone much faster. Because at one point I had to make the decisions that this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to make. So it came about when I was creating. I did a solo show with with artist books, and I had to fill a whole gallery, and it was a really good sized gallery, and I had a very limited time to create these artist books in, and with the limited time, I limited my materials that I had. I decided to kind of go with natural type things and wood. I used the same paints. I had milk paints and I had metallic paints and I had walnut ink. And I used those three things on everything. So anything that was paper, it got dyed with the walnut ink. And anything that was wood, it was either covered in the metallic paint and had acid thrown onto it to age it, or it was the milk paint, and then it was antiqued, sanded down and antiqued to make it look old. So everything had that same feel to it. Most of the pieces in that show were actually created within 3 months. And as I was working on a piece, I was able to use the same materials and just painted this piece and this piece and this piece all at the same time. It connected everything. So if I were to take this exercise and actually make my decisions and say, I want to make everything with my 3 favorite colors. Maybe my 3 favorite colors are pumpkin orange and fuchsia and neon green. Okay. And I take those and I say this, maybe I take all those 3 and I say, this is what I'm going to create everything out of. Then I know that all the materials that I have, that's what I need to start collecting. Okay. And that's what I need to start using. So for example, one time, so I was standing next to Karen Hanmer and she had this pile of papers that somebody had given to her, like handmade papers. And she's like, well, I'm not going to use these because I only do additions. She had made that decision to do additions instead of one of a kinds. And I said, well, I do one of a kinds. I'll take the stack. So I took the stack of papers. Okay. But you really, it's your decisions and what you're making, and it helps you narrow down what you're creating.
Okay. That actually sounds like a really effective way to find a style. You had a strong motivation and you were forced to limit yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that I struggle with finding my own style because I'm the only person who really is paying attention. And I just feeling doing whatever. So we do have some questions. One is, she'd love to see some examples of catalogs that people use to show their services. Then another one is difficulty finding paper companies to get filler paper from. Oh my gosh, I totally hear you on that, because every time I find a new favorite paper, the mill goes out of business, and it makes me very, very sad. And then the last one is, what is the best way to approach a business to share your work and see if they would possibly be interested in carrying your work? So I guess it would be like consignment or wholesaling kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. So the first one, catalogs. Can you repeat that question?
She just wants to see examples of catalogs, in quotation marks, that people use to show their services. So like a sort of portfolio. These are all the beautiful things I can do.
Okay, I'm still not quite understanding. So my thinking on this is that, because there's some, it depends on what you do. Is this a catalog that you create to show others, or is this a catalog that's just out there that you can put your books in that people look at?
So she says portfolio is a great word for it. And I guess the question is this a physical portfolio that you like literally hand to people, or is it like an online portfolio, a web page style portfolio?
Yeah. Okay. So we live in a world of total technology, right? Everyone's got it at their fingertips. So if it's possible to have a portfolio online, do it. Okay. Even if it's as simple as like you have an Instagram account that's specifically only portfolio and you just post your photos of your books, you can totally use that. As a business owner and somebody who has, you know, I hire a contract work and people that I need to go find them. I totally look online. They could bring me their portfolio, but I will still scour the internet looking at everything they've done. So yeah, totally. If you can put it online, it can be as simple as an Instagram account. Or even
clarified that she works with design agencies and she's trying to figure out a way to show what she offers.
to design agencies. Ah, okay. So there are different catalogs. So I'm not sure the catalogs for design agencies. There are some out there. I don't know for sure what they are. There are also, like if you're a book artist, there are catalogs created that are sent to like librarians throughout all of the United States and internationally, so that they can buy the artist books. And trying to remember who does that one. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I'll make a note of it so we can talk about it later at another point. Yeah, we'll have to like research design catalogs, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a few free ways to showcase your work. And I think you could choose any one of those ways, but curating what you're actually showing in that showcase is important. Not just throwing up everything you can do, but having work there that shows a consistent style. I think that makes you more attractive because, like exactly what you said earlier in the webinar, people know what they can expect from you. Whereas if you're sort of a chameleon and you do everything, and that's how you're trying to market yourself, your net is too wide,
Right.
and you're gonna catch fewer fish that way.
Okay, I'm calling you out, Sarah.
Yeah.
You said something to me this last week about how somebody bought a book from you recently, a particular book, and you were annoyed that it sold because it's not what you want to sell.
It's true.
You think you really want to be selling some other types of things, but they keep buying this one style. And you totally just said, you just gave yourself your own advice, right? Don't put it out there if you don't want to sell it, right?
It's true, but it's like basically the only book I've sold for the past several years. And so I'm trying to define a new style, which is why this webinar is so great for me. I'm trying to define a new style so that I can start making other things, because if I have to make one more Our Adventure Book photo album, I think I might just want to scream, because I have made that book so many times. And it's just, yeah, it was fun the first few times, but I want to do other things. So I need a new style, and I need to make it a very well-defined style so that I can start attracting different customers who don't only want Our Adventure Book photo album.
Right. So what you just said will bring up questions and concerns. So I'm sure that what's going through people's head right now is, but it's selling, right? That's that second column on the first page. What do you want to sell? What's actually selling? What do you really want to be selling? And does it line up with what you're great at making? And does it line up with what you like to make? If you cannot go across all three categories with your book, then don't put it in your portfolio. Don't put it out there to sell.
Okay. So
It's
what you're saying
hard.
is not
It,
something that I like to make, am good at making, and what was the third column?
that you want to sell.
That I want to sell. Don't put it out there. Okay.
Okay, because what's happening is, yes, it's bringing you in money,
Hmm.
but the time that you put into that book, you could be creating a different type of book that really showcases your style, that you really want to be making, you really want to be selling, and you really want to put out there. So, and that you really enjoy making. So, use that time better in that way. It's really hard because some people really want to make a living doing it, and they think the only way to do it is to sell what is, people will buy, right? But if you're making something that will really help somebody, that's being used for a purpose, and you are able to find those people and market directly to them, then you can sell what you want to make, what you enjoy making, and what you want to sell. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So I guess, what did you say? 3 months? That's how long I have to think about this?
Yep. 3 months is your deadline, Sarah.
I'm making a calendar appointment so that I don't forget. In 3 months, I need to have a style.
That's the next webinar. So somebody asked about the paper company and what to do about paper and finding paper. We are totally going to start a thread on the forums for this, okay? Because some of the best ways is to find some locally in your area. I know exactly who to, if you're in Utah, I can tell you what company to go to find certain papers. So let's just start. There's on editions.studio, there's the community, and it's a forums, and you can post anything there. We'll start a thread about the paper.
Okay. So one of the suggestions for this catalog or portfolio is create a sample of items like a fashion or lookbook, or just a sample set of small works to showcase your skill. And somebody asked about the information about the monthly bookbinding challenge, and that you can find at editions.studio/areyoubookenough, and you can sign up for the mailing list, and there's a list of all the themes for the next couple of months. And you'll also get to vote on themes if you're on the mailing list for the next time we have new themes coming out. And then Karen is asking, are artist books sold as books or art?
Well, that's a good question. I think it depends on where it's being sold to. So it really does depend on who's buying it. So some people will look at it as a book that you read because they don't really understand an artist book and how they're made.
Right.
And some people will be buying it because they really do see it as an art form. So it actually depends on who's buying it.
Well, and I also feel like it depends on how many of it did you make and how hard was it to make. Because like you have little zines, right? And some of those they're really quick to make, and you just pop them out and you make 100 in like an hour. But then you've also got books like Suzanne Moore's books. She spends 10 months on one single book and goes through so many iterations, and like every page is a beautiful piece of art in itself. And then you put it all together and it's this amazing collection that tells a beautiful story. And I'm thinking of her book that she did about Scheherazade, which is a Persian princess. There's a story about her. And so intent in when you're actually making it, how much you put into it. And yeah, I think that determines a lot whether you're going to sell it as a book or as art.
Yeah, so I recorded a video that was supposed to go onto the Are You Book Enough page on editions.studio, but I haven't finished it yet. But it's about the 6 elements of an artist book. It really helps define what an artist book is comparative to maybe like a journal or just a sketchbook or something like that. It kind of separates the two and gives the artist book more definition. So I recorded it, but it was super blurry. So I have to re-record it, and hopefully we can get that out soon in the next couple of weeks and
That's
end up. So
hilarious. I hate it when you go through the effort to make a video or something and then you look at it and you're like, oh, well, that didn't turn out. That happens a lot to me.
yeah.
Um,
So you also said there was a third question that you had mentioned earlier, the best way to approach a business
uh-huh.
with selling your books.
Right, exactly.
So some of you might have, like you're talking about, yeah, consignment or wholesale. Some of you might actually have galleries that you also want to sell your artist books in, or just even maybe not even sell them, but just present them in. The best way to approach it is to find out who actually does the decision making or allowing that to come in, whether it's the owner or maybe there's a board or maybe there's a curator specifically that you can talk to. And then you reach out. Usually I prefer to actually go in person, or I send an email and say, I'd love to come talk to you in person about my books. Because a lot of people will look at your emails or see your portfolio really quick and make a quick decision. And often it refers to their mood and they don't know you and they're not, it's kind of a little bit easier to connect with them and have them sell your stuff and accept it if you're there in person. Sometimes that's not possible because you might sell your wares in lots of different places far away. You might mail it to them. We had a few shops in Canada that sold our stuff. And so, of course, we didn't go there, but they reached out to us. And so one of the best ways you possibly can is just have your stuff online and available. Let people know. You put hashtags in, or not tags, hashtags, but tags or keywords on you're using an Etsy shop or Amazon or your website. Make sure you tag your photos and your items with things like wholesale or consignment or brick and mortar, and people will kind of come across those and find those.
Yeah, I want to second approaching in person. I've done this many times to get people to carry my books. And it's always most successful if I, A, find out who's in charge of making these decisions, talk to them in person, but not with a stack of my books already there. Okay, so I go and I talk to them in person and say, can we set up a time to look at this work? Because nobody really likes it if you just show up with a box of books and you want them to immediately drop everything and look at what you're doing. So you just introduce yourself in person if it's possible, and then set up a time to later come back with your work and your portfolio to show it to them. That's the way I've gotten the most positive responses.
Right. It's that preparation work so that they're in the mindset of, I'm going to take a look at somebody's stuff to decide if I want to put it in the shop or not. Yeah. And I usually do that by email beforehand. Can I come and talk to you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you can walk in and say, hey, can I come talk to you about my books?
Sometimes like it's hard to know who makes the decision until you walk into the store and you're like, who makes the buying decisions? You know? So there's that.
My suggestion too is that when you do go in to show your stuff, make sure you have your price lists with you. Make sure you ask them certain questions like what the rates are, what the requirements are. A lot of places, if they do consignment, they don't have insurance on your stuff. So if it gets stolen, your stuff's gone. So make sure you ask questions when you're there.
Yeah. And that actually leads nicely into I think what will probably be our last question, and that is on pricing your books, which I think we could probably do a whole hour about.
Okay, so we are going to do a whole hour about this. So this is the next webinar.
And that's going to be in 3 months, though. So is there something we can say?
In July, we will do it's really is a whole hour. So a lot of people say, here's the formula for creating your price for your book, right? there are other ways to price your books. And there's ways to feel really confident in knowing that your price is right. Okay, I have sold books everywhere from $5 to $1,400 and the whole gamut, right? It depends on the book and it depends on the artist. It depends on the experience level and the materials, and there's lots of variables that go into it. We will do, before we even, because it's such a huge thing and we really want you to feel confident about this, I will do my best to come out with a series of either blog posts or forum topics where we discuss pricing, okay, so over the next few months. This will not be a 1 hour thing. This will be a continual. The 1 hour thing will hopefully just build your confidence in knowing that you know what you're doing at the end of it. But I really want you to understand the whole process in all the various ways. So we will do our best to open that up and have that available for you.
And I know this is actually a question that basically everybody has, because there were very few people who sent me books for the tiny book exhibit that's coming next month who did not ask me what they should charge for their books. Everybody asked me what would be an appropriate price for their books. And it's not really something I can tell you how to do. I have devised my own pricing system that makes it worth it to me to make the books that I make, because I have a lot to do. I value my time, and I also know that I am skilled, and my skills are worth paying me for. I don't feel like people can take advantage of me and take my work for free, because I do good work and I work hard and I make beautiful things, and I feel like I and my work both deserve to be fairly compensated for it.
Yes.
So we're definitely going to give this topic a lot of time to give you confidence in choosing your prices and confidence in saying your prices to other people. Because I remember when I started charging more than $100 for a book, I thought, holy cow, nobody's going to pay this. I feel like such a fraud. And it took me a long time to get used to charging people fair prices for my labor and for my materials.
Yes, love it. I love that you brought up the confidence, because when I first started making books, there was I came across somebody on the internet and she was selling books for $900. And I thought, $900? Who would buy a book for $900? and then I've sold a book for more than that now. But and totally confidently sold a book for $1,400. It's not something where I even feel bad about charging them that much. That's what it was worth. And we'll totally go into the factors. It's so exciting to be able to actually be confident in what you're saying to your customer. It's really a good experience.
Yeah. So I think we can do one more question. The last question is, skilled work, of course, deserves a good price, but what is more important, selling or showing for that piece? And I'm not actually sure I understand the question. If you could elaborate, that might be helpful.
I'd like them to elaborate a little bit, but I think I might understand a little bit, or my interpretation of it. For example, I have a series of books that I did recently. It's actually on my Instagram. My most recent series was little 4x6 books, and I sold them for $150. And it took me 3 days to make one of those books, which means that's $50 a day, not even including all the material costs or anything like that. So totally not worth my time. But I loved making them. And the purpose of it wasn't actually to sell the books. It was more of a portfolio type of thing. It's a book that I want to teach others to make, and a process that I want to teach. And so I used it as my teaching portfolio. And so I created this series to show, and yes, I'll sell them, and maybe make some money back from that time that I put into it. But really the purpose of it was to show them. Did she elaborate more?
Um, yeah, so for her or him, I actually don't know.
Okay.
I'll just say for me, everything I make is for sale. What are you willing to pay for something that I might find more sentimental? So it wasn't really a question, just more of a thought from a fine art perspective. I have a painting that has a 3K price tag. I won't sell it for less because it is a marketable piece, not sentimental. It's skilled and marketable. And I find that book pricing is similar.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a book in my Etsy shop that um, it was $12, and it was a miniature little book, and it was in there for over 2 years, and it was our best advertising that we had, and it was a one-of-a-kind book. And when it sold, I was like, oh no, because I had become so attached to this book, and it was our best advertising. Which was on on lots of blogs and all over Pinterest, and
Is
like
it
it
the
was
not book?
all over. It was no, it was this little tiny 3x3 little book that had stamps on the cover,
Uh-huh.
and it just exploded all over the internet, and brought in tons and tons of people. When it sold, I was like, oh no, because it's one of a kind and it's gone. And at that moment, I thought I should have put it as like $75 or something, because no one's gonna buy it for $75. um, but I didn't, and it's gone, and I had that sad feeling. But I totally get the sentimentality when it comes to art. People do this either with their artist books that they've spent lots and lots of lots of time in putting all the hours and their skill level into. But you can also do that with your handmade books. Even just if you're making a journal, there are some books that have been really hard for me to ship off. I really love it. And some of them have been one of a kinds where I know I can't make that again. It's gone. And I really hope the person who's using it loves it just as much as I do. And so sometimes that sentimentality gets in the way. And so that might be a topic for another time, where we talk about how to separate the sentimentality from the business mindset.
Yeah.
And when it's best to do that, and when it's best to keep that sentimentality. So there are times to define that. That's such a good, I'm going to write that down. We are so going to cover that topic at some point.
Well, I think that those were some great questions. And I also want to thank everybody for joining us for our very first webinar. This has been a huge learning experience. Carly and I troubleshooted this whole process several times in the past couple of weeks to make sure that it was a good and smooth experience for you. So we're going to send out a survey that we would love for all of you to respond to, with questions we didn't answer, also and things we could have done better to make the next webinar an even better resource for you. So thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful Saturday or Sunday if it's really that late where you are.